What's up, everyone? A few days ago we released these Cotoneaster Mame onto Bonsaify.com, so today I'm going to share some of the details. I've been working on these for about 3 years now, and the whole process is basically that we take cuttings from a larger plant, and then once the cuttings are rooted, they get wired and grown out for a year, and then I start trimming them back to create finer branching. I think that the reason for the timing of the release is that most of them are about to flower. Some have more than others. It looks like I can only see one flower bud on this one right now. But I find them to be just really delightful to work with. And they really like warm conditions. So we actually, after we repot them, put them back in the greenhouse for a little while. That speeds along the growth and keeps the leaves real green. So the ones that are outside in my yard are not quite so perky, but they grow really nicely over the course of the year for us. And I use the same trick with these guys that I use for most of my small trees, which is to keep the bottom of the pot nestled into a larger container of perlite and coco coir to allow the roots to escape out the bottom, and these guys don't hesitate to do that. So this one has a few flowers on it that have already opened, a couple that are where the petals have already fallen off, and more buds on it. But during this time of the year, I don't usually trim them too much. I usually just sort of let them grow because I like to watch the flowers. Each one of the flowers can develop into one of those red fruit that I've shown in a couple of other videos. And those will hang on through the fall and into winter. All of these pots are by a potter from Sonoma County. His name is Mikel Edwards, and we recently listed some of his pots on Bonsaify.com. All of these trees are listed on Bonsaify.com right now. I just thought I actually asked him to specifically make these pots for this batch of trees. I thought that they were a nice match. I really like the coloration and just the sort of delicateness. They're about, 1.5 to 2 inches each one. If you want to keep them nicely trimmed, the only thing you really have to do with Cotoneasters is just kind of snip off the runners. That will help keep the leaves smaller, and the more leaves there are on a small composition like this, the smaller they remain. Whereas if you let the leaves run, they start to get a little bit bigger. But you can also allow the branches to run, just sort of let the thing get really bushy, especially if you want to add a little bit of weight to the trunk. The movement on this one's kind of fun. Actually probably one of my favorites of the batch. If you want to be critical, you can probably tell that most of that movement was created via wire, but I think it's still kind of delightful. It has a few flower buds here that are yet to open. The interesting thing about these guys is that you can really make like a pretty detailed, thick crown of foliage just by light pruning from this stage onward. But if you want the tree to substantially change, you can also cut off larger portions, like if I cut this here, and take those young shoots and wire them just like this was wired in order to either make a larger tree or cut it back into a smaller tree. Here's one that has slightly larger leaves, and the shoots, this is actually relatively common, the shoots coming out from the base. They're kind of a low-growing, shrubby kind of plant in nature, and so it's not surprising that they would have essentially suckers on them. I sometimes will just cut these off entirely in favor of encouraging the growth up here, but at other times I find it interesting to have the foliage down low like that, and so I'll leave them, and that's the case with this one. This one is kind of covered in flower buds. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I'm not going to trim it back because I want to just let it have its fun with flowering. But ultimately, once the flowering is done, I'll probably come back and try to maintain this portion, or even wire some of the shoots that are coming out in order to round it out, so that the tree has a little bit more of a rounded crown rather than this spiky kind of foliage up here. This one has quite a few nice little flowers open on it right now, and a few more flower buds. The trunk has an interesting shape, and it's already been trimmed back a few times, but I think the same thing, once it's done flowering, I'll probably work on actually cutting this back down a little bit further and making it more of a rounded crown that's a little bit lower. The major structure on these guys isn't completely set, so there's still some options for changing things, and I think this one's a good candidate for potentially doing that, because this might make a nice crown, but then this is a little bit weird. So if I actually take either a guy wire or a small or a slightly larger wire and bring that down and then trim this part back, I think it makes like a slightly better tree in terms of the bonsai shape. I don't see a lot of, yeah, there's a couple of flowers on there that haven't opened yet. So this one has kind of an interesting movement, kind of out that way, way out this way, and then down, sweeping back around, almost like a cascade, but with a little bit more interest than just like a regular kind of cascade line. These shoots are kind of going pretty well. I'm going to leave them for the time being to allow for more potential wiring here. We treat these guys for pests and fungus on a regular basis, and so you want to keep an eye out for scale, particularly small white dots on the bark, and treat accordingly. They are a member of the rose family, and that means that they're a little bit more susceptible to disease and insects than some other plants, but still a really fun species to work with, and I've really been enjoying this batch, and I'm excited that you guys can pick up some from one of these from Bonsaify.com if you're interested. Thanks everyone, hope you enjoyed that. See you next time.